Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing Matlock Season 1, Episode 17. So before I get into the review, I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to my channel, likes my videos, leaves me comments. I appreciate it so much. I read my comments and I thoroughly enjoy interacting with everybody. So, getting into this episode, right? I was really excited to see this episode because of where it left off last week. And not to disappoint us at all, it picks up right at the same spot. So, the episode starts with them on the street, Maddie and Olympia is questioning Maddie on the street. And I just, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So you hear Maddie say, I did it for my daughter. So I'm thinking, okay, she's really going to tell her what's going on. Let's find out how much Olympia knows. So, Olympia takes her phone, takes all her stuff, says you need to, tell your driver to leave. So, I'm like, okay, she knows something. So you see Maddie, she's now in a room with a desk. Olympia locks her in. You kind of see that from the previews. Maddie does tell Olympia everything. Like, look, this is my real name. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing this for my daughter. Somebody, hid or destroyed documents. I know what the documents were, and Olympia's kind of upset and kind of trying to take it all in. And you kind of find out as the case goes on. And you kind of see at the beginning, Olympia tells Maddie she knows who she is, and you see the flashbacks. So every episode, usually at the end, there's always that moment where you're like, oh no, Maddie's going to get found out, or, oh no, she spilled coffee on the computer and she planned it. Or, she always kind of figures it out in the end, or she does it on purpose, right? But we don't know that. So this is kind of showing all those clever moves that Maddie did, but Olympia kind of was figuring it all out. When Alfie left his wallet in Olympia's office, she actually found it and saw the last name, right? So, I mean, you're seeing all of these moments where Olympia saw her sister leave the courthouse, and she asked for footage. She got the footage of, the town car that her sister left in, found out who owned it, found out her address, and so you're like, okay, Maddie knows she's not Maddie Matlock. She's Maddie Kingston. And, Maddie even says, I changed my name legally, so that's not a lie. But it's definitely interesting. Like, Olympia wants to know what's going on, locks her in the room and says, here's a pad and paper. You write down every single lie that you told me, and you write down why you lied. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. She confiscates her phone, pats her down, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's like patting her down. And she finds, the burner phone on her leg, which was probably the phone for the Reddit person, which turns out to be Emily, or I'm sorry, Emma Lynn. But yeah, she finds everything and confiscates it. So Maddie's pretty much in a room, locked there. Olympia goes back to her office, looks at her phone, finds out that she's married, and basically goes back and is like, look, you got to call your husband. He's worried about you. Tell him you're going to be here all night. Put him on speaker. So Olympia, you've probably seen my videos. I love the actress that plays Olympia. She's incredible. She needs to win an award for her role. So does Kathy Bates. They're both incredible. And I love Jason Ritter. But anyways, I love the whole cast. But it's interesting where, even though Olympia is mad and wants to know and is upset, she still has a great heart. And she's like, look, you're married, call your husband. I want to hear it. So I liked that she kind of extended an olive branch. Like, look, I'm mad at you. I'm locking you in a room, but you're married. Tell your husband, you're going to be late. And during that conversation she has with Edwin, he even says, like, I'm glad we eliminated Olympia. I know how much you care for her friendship. So at least Olympia can see it wasn't all fake. Like, our friendship was real. So I liked that they put that in there coming from Edwin, not knowing he was on speaker. And there's a case that's kind of going along side by side with this as well. So I just had to start off with that because that was the exciting part of the episode. And throughout this, she's still working on the case, but Olympia still doesn't trust her. So she has an emergency case and she wants Maddie to work on it. And that's kind of how she gets uncovered, because Billy and Sarah are like, we need to bring Maddie in. And Olympia's like, no. So she tries to call Maddie and it rings in Olympia's purse. So they kind of follow Olympia to the 25th floor, which is where she's keeping Maddie. And that's kind of where, they find Maddie, and Billy and Sarah, are like, why are you in here? And she comes up with an excuse. I had a migraine, so and Blake gave her this office, but she didn't realize the door locked. And then Olympia's like, oh, I must have grabbed your phone by mistake. And so you can kind of see, like, Billy and Sarah find her in a locked room, and Maddie still defends Olympia, which I think was great. She didn't want everybody to know what was going on. So I think Olympia saw that too, and Olympia was like, okay, we're all working this case together. So that was kind of cool. This is one of my favorite episodes, only because I love the way everything unfolds. Also, the case. So this is kind of at night. You don't really know the time. I'm assuming it's around dinner time. It's in the evening, and a lady comes to Olympia's office. Will only speak to her. She's 9 months pregnant, right? You can tell she's very pregnant, and you find out later that she's scheduled her C-section for the following day. So she is more than ready to deliver, right? 8 or 9 months pregnant, and she's desperate. Basically, what she's asking Olympia for is for a divorce. And her husband is one of the law firm's clients. So that's why she specifically wanted to talk to Olympia. And she didn't want to go to everybody because her husband would find out about it. And her name is Amy. And, you find out more about her husband because the first thing is, you're pregnant, you're about ready to give birth, and you're kind of frantic and desperate. Let's find out more about why, A, you waited till you were 9 months pregnant, and B, why you're so desperate for a divorce. And I think why she waited was maybe that it just kind of hit her because hit her isn't the right word, found out, just realized, and, light bulb went off is what I meant by it hit her. Like a light bulb went off, like, I'm about ready to have a child, and I don't want to be with this person and my child. So if you fear for your life or your child's life, or you don't want them in a certain situation, I feel like maybe she was debating it, and now she's like, tomorrow's my C-section. I got to do something. So we really don't find out why she waited till the last minute. That's the only thing that I can come up with, was that it just kind of dawned on her, like, my life is going to change. I can't be with this person. Her husband is very controlling. For what we understand, he's not abusive physically, but he's very emotionally and verbally abusive to her, and is very controlling, knows everywhere she goes, tracks her, has people kind of spy on her, and you can kind of tell that's why she just wanted to see Olympia, because he knows where she always is. Forces her to do things like go to church on Sunday. She's an atheist. She doesn't want to do it, but he kind of guilts her into going. And of course, the typical question, like, why are you staying in this relationship? And it didn't start out that way, is what Amy said. It started out differently, right? It kind of snowballed into this little by little. And I think that happens in a lot of cases. So, I can relate to Amy because I personally have been in a relationship similar to that in the past. One of my past relationships was that way, where it started out very loving and very, attention. He would give me all this attention, and then it kind of turned into very controlling, very, have to know everywhere I'm going, have to know what time I'm going to be there, knows how much gas I have in my car, knows, how far it is to go places, controls finances, controls phones. So I have been in that situation before, and it is a little scary because it doesn't start out that way. Everybody goes, well, why did you stay? Gosh, that sounds terrible. Well, it didn't start that way. It started out very loving and sweet. And then little by little, it was, okay, well, marriage is about a compromise, let's compromise. And then you kind of realize the longer you're in the relationship, you're the only one compromising, and they're smothering you pretty much. And you're under their control, kind of like their spell. They control everything. They're telling you what to do. And like I say, it doesn't always start out that way, and it didn't in Amy's either. But it's getting to the point where she is afraid to bring a child into this world. She doesn't want to be married to this man. And so Olympia tries to do everything. The husband finds out she's at the office and goes to the office, and is irate with Olympia. And Olympia, of course, is calm and collect. And Billy is recording it. So he's like, you're recording me? And she goes, yeah, unannounced visitor at night. Yeah, we're going to record it. We have that right. And he leaves, right? Because I don't think he wants to be looked at it that way. But he calls senior or some other person in the firm, because remember, they represent the husband. So Olympia's kind of running on thin ice here. And then he finds out she's there. So he says, okay, I'll give you the divorce. So now Olympia's like, why is he okay with the divorce? What's in the prenup? What's going on? We need to find out why all of a sudden he's okay with it, right? Amy is desperate to get this divorce before she has this child. Now, one of the reasons is she's not sure that the baby's father is her husband. So that is a side story. She's afraid that he'll know that it's not him. Now, again, I take that as a side story because I think the main focus is the way he controls her and that, emotional and verbal abuse that she has, where she can't do anything for herself and he, watches her every move. So I think that's more heavy on me. But that is part of the reason why she's scared, because she had, some one night stand with her ex and she thinks that could be the father as well. But you find out when you go through all the paperwork and the prenup that if he's able to prove that she was unfaithful, then he gets rights to the child, and she gets no money. If they don't prove that she was unfaithful, then she wants a divorce, then he still gets the child and she gets some money. So either way, either scenario, he gets access to this child, and she is so scared. She doesn't want him to be a part of the child's life. For fear, like you can just tell she's fearful. So, that was when I said earlier, this case is building its emergency. They have basically that night, because she's supposed to have a C-section the next day, and she could possibly go in labor from her stress. So I'm thinking that too, like, yeah, it's planned for tomorrow, but you might be going into labor now because of all the distress that you're under. So that's kind of in the back of my mind too. So that's when I was mentioning Sarah was like, I don't care if Maddie's sleeping. We need help because we only have 6 hours to get this done. So they go to night court. They try to get the divorce. They get denied. They decide to do an annulment, which Maddie helps with, because Maddie's like, I want a clean slate. That made Olympia think of, let's try for the annulment. So they get the annulment based on fraud. There's only so many things that you can approve for an annulment. Like there's, qualifications. You have to meet one of these, to qualify to get an annulment. And one of them was fraud. And they played off of the religion when, Olympia was like, Amy, he told you had to go to church. And she's like, yeah, I was forced to go to church every Sunday, even though I didn't want to go. And they talked to the priest, and the priest actually was good friends with the husband, Grant, and actually said, even when he would travel on business trips, he would call for advice from me. He wanted to raise his kids in the church, set up baptism for them. He's a really good guy. He would not be controlling. He would never do this. So, what they found out, not that the priest said anything bad about Grant, nothing about abuse or, controlling or anything like that, but they found out that he really wanted to get his kids in the church. So that was kind of what they were able to do the fraud on, which I thought was interesting because I didn't think that's how it was going to go down. So, Amy said that Grant told her kids will not be raised in the church. That I understand you're an atheist and, I'm not going to pressure you. So they were able to show fraud in night court. Again, this is the middle of the night. And the judge approved it, agreeing with the fraud. So she was approved the annulment. And while she's in the courtroom, she's going into labor. So the judge was like, I approve the annulment as of 5:49 a.m., right? And then she has the baby in the hospital. Now, granted, the annulment was at 5:49 a.m. So before she had the baby, the annulment was, finalized. So you see a little picture of her and the baby, a beautiful baby girl. And then you kind of see Olympia look back at her own children, who are adorable. I love she's got a picture of her twins in her office, because as she sees the picture of the baby girl, she's thinking of her kids and kind of the lies that Maddie told, how it affected her, especially the pen. Remember the pen that she gave to Julian to spy on Julian ended up in Olympia's office. So Olympia was going mad thinking Julian was spying on her. There's a flashback of her going through her house at night while her kids are sleeping, just ransacking all of her pens in her house and checking, because now she's paranoid that her, ex-husband is spying on her. So, I mean, that did affect her. Some of Maddie's lies affected her personal life. So she's thinking back on that. And then the last scene of the show is Maddie coming home, because remember, it's like daylight now, right? And she rings the doorbell, and Alfie and Edwin come to the door, and I'm like, okay, this isn't good because the doorbell's ringing and Maddie lives there. She would just walk in, and they open the door and Maddie is standing there next to Olympia. So I kind of suspected it was going to go that way, because as she's explaining this to her about her daughter, I'm picturing her like murder board, or her, her research at her office, in her house, her library, or her office in her big mansion that Maddie lives in, how she has everything, out and kind of put together on this board. So I kind of suspected that Olympia was going to want to see that, depending on how much information Maddie told Olympia. So, I mean, I was surprised when I saw it, but I wasn't surprised. I thought Maddie would voluntarily bring her home. But since they kind of did it with the doorbell, with Alfie and Edwin being completely surprised seeing Maddie standing next to Olympia at her real house, her mansion, not the little fake apartment in Queens. So I loved that. That's how it ended. No words were spoken. You just saw the surprise on Alfie and Edwin's face. And Maddie's obviously exhausted because she's been up all night, and Olympia's standing there. So that is what I'm assuming, right? She's going to walk into the house and going to see all of her research. So I'm definitely excited to see that. Next week is the season finale. So I'm a little sad that we're coming up on the finale, but I'm also excited to see what's going to happen. In the little preview, you hear somebody say, if I go down, you go down. And I have to admit, I rewinded this on my TV 2 or 3 times, because I hear them say it, but I can't, for the life of me, pick up whose voice it is. It could be Olympia's, it could be Maddie's. Like, all they say is, if I go down, you go down. It could be Emma Lynn's, the lady that wrote the Reddit post. I don't know. You just hear that line. And like I said, I tried to figure out who it was. So I'm very anxious to see next week. If you go down, or if I go down, you go down. And then, so I don't know who said it, but you do hear it. And then you see Maddie and Sarah and Billy kind of hug, kind of not really in fear, but kind of in like a goodbye. So does something happen where Maddie leaves or Olympia leaves? But they kind of have a surprised look on their face, and you see the 3 of them hug. So definitely exciting. If I go down, you go down. Who says it? What is it about? What does Olympia think of Maddie's house, her new life, or her current life, and her kind of like murder board, her research board. So definitely interesting. I'm super excited for the season finale. They were renewed for a season 2, so definitely happy to get to see new episodes next year. And I hope, some of those actresses are nominated because they're amazing. So I hope you liked my review. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. And until next week, I will see you then. Bye.